Good morning. How's my volume if I'm talking like this? All right, I see a thumbs up. See, all right, cool. So, my name is Chris, for if anyone didn't know. I'm the Tonto, or head of practice for Beginner's Mind Zen Center. And my talk today is called What's So Great About Zen Forms? But before I get too much into that, I wanted to start by acknowledging and thanking my teachers, Jane and Peter Schneider. And also by saying that this talk is just to encourage you in your practice. Also, a special acknowledgement and thanks go to Greg Fain as well, as he was my teacher for a number of years. And this is how he starts his talks, and he said it was okay if I did it too. So this talk started growing in my mind. One of the times we were doing memorial service for Peter, and I kind of got off on a tangent about how wonderful Zen forms were, and Spencer very compassionately suggested that perhaps those thoughts could wait for another talk sometime. And so here it is. So a lot of you probably already know some Zen forms. I've been working with them for a while. It's one of the first things you learn about anytime you go to a Zen temple for the first time. And when I'm talking about forms, it's customary things we do and the way we do certain things when we are at a Zen temple. And these are actually a major part of Zen practice. So some examples of Zen forms are like how we hold our hands, depending on what we're doing. Like if we're walking around, we hold our hands in shashu, or when we bow, we put our hands in gasho, or the occasional shashu bow. When we're sitting, we hold our hands in the cosmic mudra. These are all some forms. When we enter the zendo, which foot we use as the first step to get into the zendo. When we bow, how we bow, not crossing in front of the altar, or if you do sidestep and bow to the altar, how we offer incense, etc., how we chant. You get the idea. So one thing that I think makes forms so great is that they give shape to our activity and to the space and time we practice in. In a very real way, it's in no small part our practice through Zen forms that makes a room a zendo or a Buddha hall instead of like a karate dojo or a yoga studio. A bundt cake is only a bundt cake, for instance, because the cake batter is poured into the bundt cake form for baking. Just so, we collectively pour our activity into these forms while we are in these spaces, and thus we create a Zen temple. Participating in the activity of a Zen temple is also pretty cool because of how old many of these forms are. When we offer incense, we are embodying the activity of countless monks who lived and practiced throughout the world over many hundreds of years. When we bow, it's like we're connected to every Buddhist who's ever bowed. Our practice keeps these practices alive and maintains a continuity all the way from our modern lives back to Shakyamuni himself. In Zen, we place most emphasis on meditation, of course, but there's also plenty of textual study, and the forms are what give Zen its devotional aspect. At first glance, devotional practices might seem much less practical than Zazen. Maybe even they seem just like superstition or just decoration or whatever. A very common question is, why do we bow? Among newcomers, but also among not so newcomers. Really, when you think about it, like, what are we actually doing when we put our hands in certain mudras, or when we move slowly, lifting Buddha's feet above our head, or when we put our rakusu or kesa on top of our head. What are we actually doing other than just going through these motions and things? What's the point of any ritual? On top of the other stuff I've mentioned, I think that devotional practices, forms for us, are the way we show respect to the spaces and actually the entire practice of Zen. Showing respect is a very good thing. To some extent, it conditions our attitude toward the spaces that we use to practice Zen and the practice itself, and this can help our motivation. I've noticed when I'm bowing to a space, suddenly I feel some kind of way about a space. If I just barge into a space, I feel some kind of way about the space and the way I feel about where I am, especially if other people are doing the same thing, definitely has an effect. And in this case, I think to some extent, we're utilizing that effect to motivate us to continue practicing, keep showing up. But more than that, I think showing respect is just the right thing to do. This practice is powerful and transformational, and it's been developed and passed down to us by many thousands who have gone before us and devoted their life to transmitting the Dharma. The Eightfold Noble Path includes right action, and this respect that I'm talking about definitely counts. In these and other ways, being reverent and showing respect is as beneficial to our spiritual growth as reflection and contemplation. Now I'm getting to some of the points that I think make forms really great. So, forms complement our sitting practice in two ways. First, we hold the forms. Then, the forms hold us. Depending on the temple we're at, there could be a bunch of forms or just a few. They might be practiced very rigidly or more relaxed. But in all cases, the forms show us our minds, as well as guide our minds to the present moment. When we are thinking about which foot to use, listening to which bell is ringing and remembering to bow or not bow, or hold our hands in a certain way, or anything else like that, we have to focus our attention on what we're doing in the present moment. If we mess up a form, maybe because we're daydreaming, our attention gets snapped back to the present moment. This exercise in intentional focus is a different way to do off the cushion what we are trying to do while we're on it, which is keep coming back to the present moment. But then, once we've internalized the forms and we know them well, they become more automatic. So at this point, the forms offer us a container, so we can think less about what we're doing and just continue the effort of seated zazen even when we get off the cushion. Just trying to keep our minds from getting agitated. Just let the minds settle on the present moment. We can just let ourselves experience the present moment too, and enjoy that experience for whatever it is. My last thought is just this. Forms direct us and help hold us in the present moment, here and now, where our lives are. And this is really nice for, among other reasons, the simple and important fact that we can't find any liberation or contentment anywhere besides here and now. Our intentional action, guided by the forms, shapes our momentary existence into something elegant, reverent, and peaceful. And this, in turn, makes the ground of our lives more fertile for cultivating awakening, practice enlightenment, freedom, and joy. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and please take very good care of yourselves. So, Q&A time.
I think that is really good as to why we do. So they're going through a very strict practice, and being held by the forms, me being respectful and open, is a good way to meet those difficult experiences.
And our practice definitely can be difficult.
Yes, it's a very difficult practice, but with the help of the forms that when they hold us, it's a very good thing. So when you come into a Zendo, you don't feel odd or strange. Your first reaction is just to put your hands in the gasho at the door or before the altar, and you feel right at home. And you've collected yourself very quickly when you do that. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say your talk brought up when I first joined this Zen group. Before that, I had always practiced a Nichiren form of Buddhism, and what surprised me was that there was so much form. And at first, I started questioning them, and then when I was, as I had been there several months. Whoops. What are you doing? Go away. As I'd been there several months, I started helping people when they first came to like a first time or second time and they had questions. And it never failed. Everyone always wondered why. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Some of people were not comfortable with bowing. And I tried to explain that, it isn't that we're bowing to a deity, it's we're giving respect to a human being for putting so much of his life uh, through all those struggles to finally reach enlightenment so that he could pass that on to thousands and thousands of people, maybe millions. I don't know how many Buddhists there have been in the world. But, and so eventually, I started looking at the forms as people asked me questions about them. And they started making sense, and they slowly kind of crept into my practice in a way that I could appreciate them more. So I enjoyed your talk. And I've noticed that throughout the time I practiced, uh, the forms do make a difference. They make a tremendous difference. And I noticed that some Zen groups have chanting practices, uh, not always Zazen, but other forms. And it's just, it's always been something that has intrigued me, a lot of the forms. But then when you go back and if you study the history of Buddhism and you see where these forms began, uh, it's not only is it intriguing that they're so old and that yet they've passed down through all these centuries. Uh, I think without form like that, uh, it would be a lot harder to do our practice. I think it not only does it enhance your individual feelings about practice, but I think as a group too, that comes through. That as we all participate together, that there's that feeling of unity because of the form of our practice. And it makes us a Sangha, a group with common goals. And so thank you. I really appreciated the talk.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Those what you shared just now was really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I think
Um,
Rachel's next.
yeah, I think I see Rachel's hand up, has been up for a little bit.
Yeah, she came on right up when I did, right after me.
Thank you,
There she
Chris.
is.
And there were two resonances for me. One was physicality, which is, we're talking about the physicality of form, not just, you might say, thinking in words. It's not just conceptual. You actually have to perform it in some ways. There is a physicality which takes it into another dimension. And I'm just reminded because there's solitary and then group. And there's a difference between entering a zendo and doing a solitary vow, and then being with the group and doing the form. And I hesitate saying dense given the audience, but there is it's odd, a resiliency and flexibility as well as rigidity when you're following forms. I mean, it's kind of fascinating. The other thing is, it just reminded me, I do not know which teacher it was who said this. It might have been Ajahn Sumedho from Theravada, but it could have been Zen. I just don't remember who said it. But that if you wanted to really look at individuality, it could have been Suzuki Roshi. I just don't recall. But when you have everyone in the same uniform, you really notice the differences. I mean, it's just amazing when everybody's wearing supposedly the same outfit, like a school uniform or something. You know, each person has to put their little individual mark. I mean, it's when the hems are different, or the neckline, or one's dirty, or you can really start to see. But when you say, oh, this is Summerhill, we get to express ourselves each individual way, and everyone has a go at it, somehow it's easier to see each individual idiosyncratic expression when supposedly they're all in the same form. And anyway, that did remind me when you brought up form, because it's remarkably rich, and it seems rigid to those who refuse it, but there's much greater suppleness to it, and also it, as was mentioned, it really can become a default. So no matter how you feel, you find yourself in reverence, and then maybe your feelings can catch up to your body. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so this was it specifically in regards to like how I'm supposed to sit. But one comment that either Peter or Jane gave me early on was that it's like a young sapling, where yes, it's firm, but it's also alive and flexible. So it's active. And so this also applies, I think, to the forms as well. As people look and get a really like military vibe from it, or like, oh, we're all being brainwashed. We are a mindless robot. You know what I mean? And that always cracks me up, because just the lived reality of it for me has been so very different, that it's all, yeah, it's like, no, you can never have an identical bow, not even with yourself. Even if you're doing like 9 in a row at the beginning of service, like each one is going to be a completely different experience, and not just from a default theoretical perspective. It's the actual bowing. We pay attention to it, and seeing that right up close and personal is a great teaching in presence, and in every moment is the universe. I think that's a Dainin Katagiri book. Each moment is the universe, or maybe that's Suzuki Roshi. But yeah, these forms are teachings as well. If I ever do this talk again, I'll make sure to throw that in. I see a hand coming from the Zendo. It looks like Mike.
Yep.
Yes, Mike.
I'll keep this really brief. I mentioned this to you before, Chris, in our talks when you were driving me here. I've always felt that like the forms were a way of teaching our body. We talk to teach our mind and everything like this, but the forms reinforce that understanding by going through the physical motions of bowing, how we hold our hands and stuff. And I'm reluctant to use this word in a Zendo, but I think it makes our practice more serious, because when we do the forms and we concentrate on our forms, it makes our practice almost more valid, because our whole being is now involved. It's not just a mental thought going on, a conversation here, the physical activity of bowing. And what do you do when you're not in the Zendo, when you're in your private home? If you've got a little place you meditate and you've got a statue, do you bow to that? Do you, this stuff, it helps reinforce our practice. And I believe it really makes us really take it more seriously, because we are teaching our body as well as our mind.
Yeah. Well, it's like the mind and the body are kind of on a continuum. Yeah, Spencer.
So, I see a lot of vow in form and form as vow. So, vow, the form is the physical manifestation of our vows. We prostrate ourselves to Buddha, we say these words, and we become our vows. And that's how we unite body, speech, and mind. And the form is important, as you talked about, because although we're all identical, it allows us to express ourselves. So the form is a container for our inner creative expression. It allows us to be in this environment, creates safety. So, the form, is the structure of our practice. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you for that too.
Good.
Well, I see. All right, John's hand. Boom, there it is.
Thank you for the talk. Excellent. I just had two quick things. The first is that with regards to bowing, especially with people apprehensive about the act of like bowing to a statue of Buddha or what have you, the way it was explained to me originally, and the way I like to explain it to people, is that when you're bowing to an image of the Buddha or a variation thereof, Avalokiteshvara. Oh my God, I can't speak this morning. You get the point.
Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah, I can't do that this morning. I'm a little bit under the weather. But in any case, you are bowing to your Buddha nature. You are acknowledging you're acknowledging the Buddha. The Buddha is you. You are Buddha nature. You are really bowing unto not yourself, but your Buddha nature, which is everything. So that's the way that was explained to me. And with regards to forms, it kind of gets back to where the study of the simplest things and the seeking of the perfection of the most simplest thing actually can get, and we find this probably most prevalent in our meditation, but dancers, they find it in their art. Visual artists find there are artists who have done nothing their entire lives but the same exact still life over and over. You can look at the work of Matisse and the haystacks and Monet, and where you can learn the expanses of the universe through the repetition of a singular act, the study of a singular act, and the seeking to perfect that. And for me, that's a lot of what comes into forms as well. Thank you, Chris. Great talk.
Thank you. Yeah, I liked your comment, your observation, or passing along what you'd heard anyway about bowing to the Buddha statue. It's like I'd heard someone say it's sort of like a mirror in a way, but what it's reflecting, or what we can see in it, is a reflection of basically what's not our small selves, but our potential, or perhaps the big self, or maybe just our Buddha nature. And yeah, we're bowing to that. I was like, yeah, never mind. I'm not going to go down that road. All right, cool. Hey, cool. I'm doing good about that. I think, what's up?
I was just laughing at you. I'm going to put myself on mute. I was laughing at you catching yourself, not like non-digression. I love it.
Yeah. It's been a years long practice, and it's, I'm anyways, I think I saw Jane raising her hand again.
Yeah, just wanted to say something to you and John. In Japan, I went to an art show where a woman started a series of ink-drawn portraits of herself, mostly the head and shoulders. And every day she did another one for like a year or so. And they changed so much. It was incredible to see how it went. And the last ones were titled The Father and the Daughter. And there was like this unbelievable change of face and body, and you could see the whole thing changing. I thought it was a wonderful show to see how every day, every moment changed, not just her expression, but the way of doing it. So it began very simple with the head and shoulders and the face, and then as it went on, the face disappeared, the head and shoulders disappeared as we would think of them, and all the form changed all the way, so that when we got to the very last, the father and the daughter, it was unbelievably different. And you wonder where she got the incredible creativity to express a person without a face, a neck, or shoulders, and yet it still is obviously a person. And I was so inspired by that show that I wanted to go home and start the same thing myself, but it was really a tough type of thing to do.
I kind of feel like Zen is, in a way, an art form.
It is. I was going to say the same exact thing, Chris, that like what Jane just said about that exhibition is a direct parallel to our practice, and how it begins one way and it often begins very rigid, and yet over time it begins to take on a personal form and to change and to become something that's the same but completely different. And I agree that I could see you saw the same thing I did, and I'm sure a lot of others did as well.
And you could see the person in the portrait at the very end when there was no face, no shoulder, no head, neck, or whatever. It was just completely different. It was really very creative, and I thought we do the same.
Nice. Well, Spencer, anything else?
No, I think Dharma is the truth, and each one of us has a different expression of that truth, like art. So it comes out differently, but whenever someone gives a Dharma talk or talks about the Dharma, I'm drawn in because this is, their creative expression of who they are as Dharma. So, for some Some people's Dharma expression is really beautiful, or all of our Dharma expression is really beautiful, but some really blows me away. So thank you for your expression of the Dharma today, Chris.
You are very, very welcome. And thank you, Spencer and Jane, and everyone for giving me the opportunity to try talking some about this thing. So, that eloquent note, let's do some forms. Let's do service.